Let's go ahead and call the Festus City Council work session agenda for September 6th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Small change to the agenda. We're going to do Pledge of Allegiance after roll call, please. So Carrie, we do roll call.
Councilman Boyer.
Here.
Councilman Collier.
Here.
Councilwoman Templeton.
Here.
Councilman Weiner.
Here.
Councilman Dennis.
Here.
Councilman Venz.
Here.
Councilman Tinnen.
Here.
Okay, everybody please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First thing on the item, let's do review the budget, and I will turn it over to Stephanie and Greg.
I can go ahead and start. No changes in the budget highlights that we presented to you at the last council meeting, with some small exceptions. The time pressure that we have on replacement of the SCBA or the air packs in the fire department made those a little more critical. They expire in the first quarter of 2024. Not knowing the lead time and their availability, we figured it was best to move those up into the new fiscal year. So you will see that under fire for $300,000. We did lower the training tower upgrades. There are some burn panels that need to be replaced, but it's not as critical as obviously getting those air packs replaced. They basically need two pieces of equipment, and it's turnout gear and air packs for them to be able to do their work. So that is one change from the information presented to you last week. Also, after taking a look at capital reserve and where we are as far as outlay, we felt that it was safe to recommend a water and sewer rate freeze. Also, given our current economic climate, I think our residents would appreciate some relief. So the proposed 2% and 2.9% increases that were in there when you last reviewed the green sheet now show a rate freeze, and the capital reserve and those accounts are pretty healthy at this time. Outside of that, everything else is as it was presented to you at the last meeting. Really just an opportunity for us to talk about any specific projects, anything that you want to know more about. I do want to talk about one thing in particular before I kind of turn it over. You'll see in here the 10-year debt service on a number of projects. That includes the new roof here at City Hall. It also includes a large water meter project. Those are the cloud-based meters that we're wanting to go to. It'll give our residents real-time data. They'll be able to eventually log into our website and see what their water consumption has been down to the minute. So it's a pretty cutting edge system that we're excited about. It also, of course, addresses a new roof at Public Works, upgrades to actually replacement and upgrades at the library as far as the HVAC and the LED lighting there as well. That is about a $2 million package altogether. Those are all based on recommendations from our partnership with Verigy that we've been working through for the last year or so. They've made some good recommendations. They've incorporated some green energy, some energy reclamation. There's a lot of incentives available to people that do these type of projects through Ameren. So we want to be able to kind of cash in on that. I think I sent out one of my Friday updates, the energy conservation measures and the addition of some solar here at City Hall will garner us over $300,000 in savings over a 20-year period. So all those are kind of tied in with each other. And it'll be one of the few times that the city itself, as opposed to a water or sewer authority, will be dipping its toe into the market. We're looking to do is work with a local bank. We'll work from a much larger list of banks, but we're hoping we can partner with a local bank that will want to finance that project for us. By spreading it out over 10 years, we anticipate the interest rates 10 years from now might be a little higher than they are right now. So there'll be some cost savings. It gets us in the market a little bit. We do have a good, obviously a good rating. Going through that here not too long ago, about 3 years ago. But it's an opportunity for us to be in the market a little bit and move some money through a local bank lending institution at the same time. So happy to answer any questions related to that. And then we can dig down into some of the smaller pieces if you like.
Greg, just a real overview question here. Not anything micro at all, but just like the general health of the city. And I saw like 5% is what you're estimating the sales tax increase and so on, and expenses. And can you just give us a big picture view of what's happening?
Sure. I think the last 2 years, because of the uncertainty with what was just happening in the world at the time, we budgeted flat, or we budgeted at about a 1.5% to 2% growth rate, and we saw much more than that. The amount of specifically retail sales tax revenue and the amount of residential growth that we've seen in our area as well, which will affect our obviously our property taxes. The new in that, not anything to do with a reevaluation. We did very well from a revenue standpoint over the last 2 years. Now, talking about what they're hoping to do, which is to slow down the economy a little bit with inflation, wanting to get things to cool off a little bit, not entirely to where it drops into a recession, but you would anticipate growth rates not to be in almost the double-digit range, which is where we've been in the last 2 years. But you would anticipate that it was certainly going to slow down into the singles and conservatively probably past that 8% mark where we're seeing CPI run right now. Actually 9% on some reports this morning. So we felt that a comfortable landing point for us, one based on as hot as things have run the last 2 years, at the same time, not anticipating them to entirely cool down, and to say that 1% growth rate, that 5% is a good place to be. Even if it may seem conservative or too much, based on our performance for the last 2 years, the city's in a very comfortable spot with where we've been from a revenue to expense ratio. We've had some additional expenses. Fortunately, we've had some federal funding that's helped us out along the way, the CARES Act, the ARPA funding. We still have grant revenue that's available to us that we've been putting to work. That helps us out, the 80/20 projects for street reconstruction and things like that. So I think the landing point there was, one is a overarching need to, I think, kind of cover for the last 2 years, at the same time anticipate some slowdown, and also balance out what we know we need to do in relation to wages. And that 5% number is where we kept coming down based on everything that we're reading in the market right now, and what we anticipate will happen in the coming months. So health of the city, good. And we're in a position to be able to be a little more ambitious, I think, from a cost of living standpoint. With the amount of money that we've been able to put in our employees' pockets to help them out during some difficult times, and then to be able to step up a little bit more from a cost of living adjustment, which is typically in a 2.5% to 3% range, and run it around 5%, I think puts everybody in a good position moving forward.
Any other questions?
I have one. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not. You mentioned the subdivision, all the new homes going in.
Mhm.
Given that every square inch of property now has a house on it,
Just about.
which impacts everything from our schools to police, fire, ambulance, all of that, as well as just infrastructure. Do you feel that we have enough people from a police, fire, whatever standpoint, that we're keeping pace with it? I think the school is going to struggle to keep pace with it.
Mhm.
But do you think that we have department that is large enough, either on either side of that, as well as just city employees and everything else, parks and everything else to handle that additional
Yeah.
influx.
I think we're well positioned. The departments, as far as their asks coming into the year, really the only one we weren't able to work into the budget was a part-time evidence officer for the police department. Their budget this year is a little tight, but that's okay. The one where we really saw a critical need was in the Parks Department. With the reappropriation of the 50-50 split to a 60-40, or is it 65-35?
I think 60, 40.
60-40. Reappropriating a little bit more of that stormwater parks money to our Parks Department to get them some additional help. Mainly just someone who can run maintenance over the weekends. I think was really where we kept coming down as being one of the key critical spots. It's a 5-man department, and haven't been able to fill that 28-week position for the last couple of years to give them some extra help. So we felt that we just needed to step up and find a way to make that a 40-hour position and help Josh and the guys out a lot, because the parks are getting used a lot, and that's wonderful. From a staffing standpoint, I think we're in very good shape. I don't think we're in a spot. I don't feel we're in a spot where we need to stretch things out a little bit. We're doing a good job. Granted, some folks are having to work some overtime. I know the PD had to work overtime with the car clottings that we've had going on in the last year, longer than that. I think we're going to need to be able to build for some growth in our fire department. But with some of the capital items that are on their list, this is probably not the year for that. We'd like to help them get a little more money in the bank before they start maybe dipping into that. And once you start setting aside money for operations, that money is committed. So being able to pull it back means you're basically going to have to let somebody go. I think our approach of being able to add a firefighter in the coming year or two and begin filling out that ABC shift with essentially a third person, because you have your captains, you have your engineers, and then being able to add that third firefighter full time. But I think there's a lot of things that'll affect that as well. There's obviously some heavy equipment needs once the new truck's delivered. Hopefully the ladder continues to be serviceable. But you're then talking about what's the current 14, the frontline pumper is going to be 7 years old. So it's gonna have some miles on it. It's not miles, it's hours. It's got pump time, it's got hours. So those are some of the key things that I think that impact that personnel equation more than anything else. So I think we've done a good job of considering all of the departmental needs and asks, and identifying the ones where we could find some funding and make it work sustainably. Was the way it was kind of the approach we took with this. That's exactly the approach we took with this, not kind of.
And the split was 65-35.
65-35. So the big item here, as we talked about, I just want to make sure that the kind of one of the big highlights is that we pushed ourselves up into the $16, especially in some key positions, which was our base laborer and a starting dispatcher. We were having a hard time filling dispatcher spots at $15 and base laborers at about the same number. So those salary ranges will begin now at that number, $16.29 to $79. That's for the dispatchers. They go up 50 cents once they get their certification. And then the beginning labor will start at $16.42. On top of that as well, this is the year we're moving the ranges. So all of our ranges will be moving 5%. So all of our starting pays will be moving. It just made good sense to move everyone in concert with each other. So if we're moving the bottom number 5, everybody needs to move up from that 5 as well.
One for the council to discuss, if there's any discussion. The mayor, I spoke to the mayor this morning and in discussing raises with the employees, Greg's raise came up. And the discussion was that since all the employees are getting 5%, the mayor said in his opinion, and I share his belief, the employees have worked way beyond what our expectation level is. We would like to consider all employees to receive the 5%, including our city administrator. I want to bring that to the council's attention in case there's any discussion.
Stephanie, do you feel it's, do we have it?
Yes, yes.
We have the
that's-
money to be able to do
Yeah,
that?
general fund is very healthy at the moment, so.
Okay. So we're not stretching anything or,
No.
okay, we're well within. Okay, thank you.
I only plugged it in that way because I'm the only employee with a contract. It's an evergreen contract as we agreed to here back in 2018. I'm very appreciative of all that you have been able to provide for me, and hopefully I've been able to provide for you. At the same time, because it is kind of an unprecedented number, 5% on a cost of living adjustment, I didn't want to lump myself in there because I do have the ability. The only employee in the city that has the ability to basically sit down and negotiate with you guys. Not asking to do that this year, but I appreciate being considered in the same boat with everyone else, if that's the council's pleasure.
Any further discussions on that part? So my weekly Texas will continue, my week in Texas.
I do have another question. When it comes to payroll for our, I guess, just in general, how do we relate or compare to other cities our size?
You know, it is a constant research project. The city of Peabody is just finishing up a compensation survey. We participated as someone who provided data to them on where all our salary ranges are. And of course, we had other cities that when we did ours back in 2019 that participated and provided us with data. We are where we need to be. If you compare us with, say, the county, although the county has really stepped up their game here lately, we've lost a couple of employees to the county. But then say Arnold, you would consider us to be number 3 on the list, and we fall in there in virtually all the categories, especially with the adjustments we're making with the scales as proposed here with this budget. The other communities that we've looked at, say in Franklin County, that or down in St. Francis or St. Genevieve County, even into the southern St. Louis metro, we fall very comfortably from where we ought to be. We lost some ground the last 3 years. That first year of the salary study, everything was dead on, and then the pandemic came, and people started, it was starting to become difficult to find workers. And just as the business community was stepping up and you were getting $17 an hour to work at a fast food restaurant, the government side of things, we had to step up our game as well. If we want to have good workers that are invested in our community, we're going to have to pay a little bit more. So one of our key focuses going in from the get-go was, what can we do? What do we need to do? What's the number we need to come up with to stay competitive in the market? And even after adjusting into the $16 range here on some of our basic positions, some of the smaller communities who are having a harder time finding people to work, who maybe don't have the resources we have. And by resources, I mean equipment, benefits and support. They're having to pay more. So you'll continue to see that. You'll see $17, $18 thrown around. But I think that's kind of the balancing act we have to play to be able to stay competitive in the market, and kind of within our pecking order at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does. My question, obviously, you know where I'm coming from, is you're paying a police dispatcher or dispatcher period less than $17 an hour to deal with that. And I realize that every position has its own stresses, But my concern is it's so hard to keep people being dispatchers, to be policemen, to be firemen, to want to work in the parks, that at some point, the concern is we're going to start losing good people because they're going to go over to get, a couple more dollars an hour. So that, I know you can't just give everybody, a raise across the board. I just want to make sure that we're doing what we can to offer what we can. I mean, granted, they have a lot of other benefits on top of that, which I think you have to consider as well, but.
And that is always kind of I always have to temper that a little bit when we look at it as a whole. Obviously, something we provide to the employees every year is a wage and benefit summary. So it's a sheet that shows not just what their salary is, but also any of the stipends they may receive, the merit. It's not a merit. It's a safety bonus, a safety incentive. It's the health, participate in our health fair.
See an example of that?
Sure.
That would be,
They ha-
that's, I just wanted to see what the total. package
Yeah,
was.
well, I can send the whole worksheet around, or the workbook around. You can see.
Yeah, we
where-
have it for every department. And so that way, whenever somebody's hired on, we give that to them, the person right away so that they can see the full benefit package. That was something that when I started here that he wanted to start doing. And then every year when we give them the new rate for October 1, we give them that as well with their first
We
paycheck,
update
so
it
they
every
can see
year.
that.
I think for the council members, it's kind of due diligence. We need to know what, because you can look at it and say, well, you're only, you're making $17 an hour, but that's plus medical, plus your pension, plus your vacation and all those other things to see,
Well, you
just to be aware.
yeah. So we break down not just their salary and any possible incentives they may receive, which are not a lot. But then it's a full breakdown on what their FICA contribution is, what their loggers contribution is, what their health insurance contribution is. So they know the total that gives them a sense of how much, hopefully the balance between the amount of compensation they're receiving, but also the amount of paid benefits that they're also receiving, that the city's picking up the tab on in virtually every instance.
Versus job.
Mhm.
That's the difference.
And I will say this, in virtually every department. No, I'll take that back. In every department, we are incredibly blessed with some employees that have decided that this is where they want to work. While there's a lot of turnover in other communities, and not just in this area or in Missouri, we have employees that are really committed to wanting to work for Festus. And that includes some of the younger ones that maybe could go chasing a paycheck, that could maybe make $18 an hour instead of 16. But they realize that this is a good community to work for. They're led by reasonable, objective, intelligent leaders. And I was talking about you guys. I wasn't talking about me. I think they really see the value in serving the community. So we're blessed there, and it's in every department, whether it's the ones that are on the front line, like police, like fire, like dispatchers, but it's the ones that come out in the middle of the night, push the snow, or fix the water sewer leak. It's the ladies at the library, the men and ladies at the library. So I think everyone, all on the whole, it's a group of people you can be very proud of.
Quick question for you. This going last stinks, by the way. Kudos to Sam for discipline, for always waiting last. Is there been any food for thought on changing maybe our benefits to where we increase vacation time if we can't always increase monetary value, where we offer more time off in lieu of, hourly wage? Just food for thought.
I know you make a valid point. Something we've been talking about, seemingly a endless process, is the review of the personnel policy manual. Matt has been working. He and I have had a chance. He's done his handoff to me, and I've had a chance to look at some of the recommendations. And one of the things we've talked about in there is addressing PTO, pay time off. Do we want to do it where we just put it all in one big PTO pot, or do we want to continue to kind of parcel it out for certain uses, whether it's sick bank, vacation, personal holiday, something for family leave or something for funeral leave. Because I think in a lot of ways, the old way of looking at time, where we have to be the custodian of the time and how it's used, is a little old fashioned. It's their time. They've earned it. And they can use it however they like, is a certainly opposite end of the spectrum approach to it. But it's something I think that maybe we need to consider. Something that we're certainly going to spend some time looking at. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Well, and we did add extra holidays, a few extra holidays in the past couple of years too. I mean, so we are trying to do things like that. And we took on the health insurance increase for every year since I've been here. We've taken that on, so that wasn't passed on to the employee. So we are trying to look at other things if we can't have a higher cost of living.
Greg, just one more question then. So kind of along the line of what Mike was saying, as far as vacation time, and I'm not advocating this, but I'm just asking this, has a 4-day work week for certain departments or certain personnel? I don't know if that's something that could work but it was certainly a 3-day weekend versus a 2-day weekend would certainly be a bonus for someone.
We have talked about it. The difficult, and I don't want to say it's the difficulty, it's just a challenge, is maintaining the same level of service. So let's just use City Hall for the example. And one, I'll speak for myself and then kind of the hierarchy down. I wouldn't feel comfortable working a 4-day week. Even if it was 10-hour days, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I just feel that I need to be here 5 days a week. The idea of being able to say stagger shifts, where someone comes in later and stays later, someone comes in earlier and is able to leave earlier, to get that overlap to where you can still get a full 40 hours from the employee and at the same time provide 5 days worth of service, which in some cases at City Hall isn't as convenient as it could be because folks typically are working between 8 and 4:30 when we're open. So getting by here for something from us usually requires a special trip. Now, obviously in our emergency services, that's they do have shift work in some instances. Obviously they're working 24-hour shifts or they're working 10-hour shifts. So that's kind of a jumble there. And I don't think there's a way to balance it. So really the only department you could really talk about doing that would be Public Works. But there it's a level of service. Can you still get the amount of work that needs to get done? I mean, we have a trash truck dump radiator fluid all over Main Street here last week, and Matt's out there pushing a broom. I mean, it's one of those situations where really I think our ability to meet the service.
It happened.
They took a picture.
It happened.
There is evidence. Now he was resting his hands on the end of the broom handle, but the be able to continue the service delivery, and the fact that if it is an emergency, they're going to have to come out anyway, just makes it a tough fit. Because really for us, if you look at it, I know like there was an article in the Post-Dispatch about how the number of school districts that have gone to 4-day weeks in the last 5 years has just exploded. Went from 1 to over 140 in the entire state of Missouri here in the last 5 years. But it's if there's an expectation for service, it doesn't matter what day or what time. So altering your work week and giving a portion of your job force the day off on a Monday or a Friday, I think may just diminish your ability to give 100% all 5 days. And knowing that if it snows at midnight on Saturday, they're still going to come out and work. So I think it's a fair question to ask. We have looked at it. The logistics of it, they just don't work. And we do want our employees to have the ability to take time off when they need it, to rest and recharge and come back and rejuvenated and ready to work. And I think we're fair in the way that we provide them holidays. We give them the PTO that we do give them. So it's not a perfect system, but I think we have a very good one.
I got something. I know one thing that you can do that is a way to reward them is by giving them longevity pay. And what that means is you get an X amount of dollars for every month you were there one time a year. So it does two things. It rewards your older employees that have been with you forever, and then it builds a reason to stay and be a new employee. So I know they had that where I work. You got X amount of dollars a month, one time a year in November, you got a check. So that's something you can give everybody. It don't show up as part of those salaries, but it would show up as definitely a benefit. But that's one way to build that longevity, which in some areas, it gives you a reason to stay and maybe not go when you can say, well, I get this because, I'm staying and I'm a good employee. But I agree with you, going to a 4-day work week, somebody's going to get shorted on that Friday or that Monday. I just think that with a lot of places that's a savings, to go to that. I wouldn't be for having less services, but I would be for finding a way to give them more money, and longevity pay is one of them.
Kevin, I know the county went to 4 days a week for the summer, and it has not been a huge hit. In talking to the personnel at Public Works, it's been pretty mixed feelings, honestly, including the supervisors, especially when projects are getting wrapped up and they're running behind the clock. So longevity pay, Kevin, I like the idea. Is this something we can pick up on when the mayor's back and we can discuss this later down the road, you think?
Yeah. And he's more than familiar with it. JPAD had it, and it was a huge hit. So it was a way when some of your people top out on their salaries, they can still gain a little bit. You might want to make some of it retroactive. But once again, I'm not saying how to fund that. I'm just saying it's something we can look at. So at this point,
We do pay out at certain years, like I believe it starts at either 20. So there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 in there for this next year. So based on however many years they're here, that whenever their year of service comes around, they do get a nice check. So a couple of them are in here for $400, and then there's a 600 and 2 800s. One of them sitting in the room. So so
so the one thing when you look at it that way. So in this day and age, we need to build longevity early. We need maybe that 1 year, that 2 year, that 3 year, that 4 year, that 5 year employee, and that's just the day we live in. Because, like I said, people are moving. So, I mean, the one that we got certainly rewarded people that have been there forever. But even at the lowest level, you got something. So you're building. But just at the 20-year mark, what about all the other building years? And that's real important nowadays because you're trying to get people to stay with you. And this gives them one more reason to, even if you did it, I like doing it by the month. But even if you did it at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and put a number on it, to build up to that 20. But right now we're only doing it at, I guess you said the 20-year mark. And I remember talking about this years ago, but I think we need to put a little more time in our lower end so we get those 20-year people, especially in this day and age where we're trying to get people in the door and keep them.
Kevin, one of the things we have looked at as part of the personnel policy update is dropping that to start at 5, year 5, even if it's say $10 a year at 5, but you kick it in. So 50, 60, 70, 80, keep going up. So you get a $200 check at 20 years, you'd get a $300 check, or maybe working $20 increments. It's getting the numbers plugged into the equation to see what works. But I feel pretty strongly about finding a way or a method to get that drop down to that. I think that 5-year threshold. By the time they hit 5, you can say, okay, they've been here a while. They're vested in loggers at that point. So it kind of ties into some natural employment anniversaries that are part of them being here in the first place. So hopefully we'll have a good proposal for you guys to take a look at here I like the idea of rewarding them and rewarding them as early and often as you can, especially if they're doing good work, right? By the time they're 5 years in, we ought to have it all sorted out and kind of know what the worker employee employer relationship is, and what their expectations are and what ours are of them at the same
So,
time.
Greg, I got a question. So, you said that, we had an exceptional year in the last or exceptional years, last 2 years. But my concern is like say 2008, I think it was 2008, where everybody was sealing everybody's employees because they were paying them, offering a whole lot more money. And then, basically, we were employee poor because we were paying people so much money to have people. And then the work quit. And kind of like what you said, we had 2 great years. What happens if we have a turn down in the economy and the city can't make the money? I want to add to this. So what Kevin was saying, I really like that idea. And I know we've talked about it with the stipends and stuff. And it seems to me like programs would be the way to go. That way we don't have to have that extra high pay. Because it seemed like in 2008, when the work quit, people wouldn't, so let's say they were making $30-$35 an hour. And then real times came and they were really worth $20-$25 an hour. They wouldn't work for less than $30-$35 an hour. So they went on the unemployment line. And as far as I know, I don't know where that group of people ever went because they never came back from them. So I know we did something for the employees with a stipend and some other things. And I just think that might be a really good way to look at it, because then you're not locked into a high salary, but yet the people know that if they do the right thing, that by the work, they're going to get paid more money, and the incentive is there to be there more often, to learn how to do different parts of their job. I just think we need to look at a lot of that stuff.
You make some excellent points, Jim. I think one of the things that is fortunate for us, and 08 is a great example, is while the market fell out in September of 08 and disappeared off a cliff, God forbid you were retiring in December of that year, the economic impact in a large metropolitan area was huge and almost immediate. For outstate communities, and we're still a bit of an outstate community, if you want to call it that, there's an insulation. Just in my experience, it probably took another 2 years for it to trickle down to southern Jefferson County. Arnold might have been hit by it right away, but it certainly didn't happen here, and it didn't happen to communities south of us. It was really 10 and 11 where you started to see some of that start to show up, and that's when the housing market started to really be affected, because it was affected all over Missouri. So couching it kind of with that historical perspective, and then looking at how our economy, just our Festus economy, has run for the last 2 years, which has been overheated. We would anticipate it's going to have to cool down. It has to cool down. You're not going to be able to keep running it at we've had sales tax return months where we've been 13-14% over projections, and projections were going to be 2.5 over the year before. So it's going to cool down. But I don't think the bottom falls out.
Well, but you take like, and I don't want to get into politics, but if you just look at the economy as a whole, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not excited about paying, 10, 20, 30% more for a meal or gas or anything like that. But the thing of it is, to get people, they had to start paying people McDonald's $15-$16 an hour. And then eventually, I think everybody is gonna say, hey, we're tired of paying, 10, $12 for a Big Mac or whatever it is. So what happens? It seems like a real similar situation from 2008 because everybody got big raises just to keep the job. And then eventually people are tired of paying the inflated prices, but I don't know if the prices will ever go back down again. That's the whole thing that I don't understand.
Yeah.
But if you look at it in comparison with 2008, 10, 11,
Mhm.
it's very similar, I think. And different items,
Yeah.
but kind of the same.
Yeah,
think-
the economic fact, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, they used to call that labor correction. Because if you look at 08 to 010, the labor correction took place big time. And actually the cost of goods decreased according to Wall Street Journal. Just wrote an article 2 months ago about it, talking about 08, 09 and how goods did drop in price and you had a negative index for consumers.
You're
So
right. They think,
it did
reverse.
change.
It did reverse.
It did.
But then it went right. It kind of just creeped up real slow again.
That's
So
capitalism.
nobody ever remembered what
Yeah.
happened, kind of,
Yeah.
unless you were involved in it.
Yeah.
And I definitely seen it, but
We're fortunate that we have new revenues too, to insulate us from, if we have existing retailers slide, remember, they're being supplanted by, or it's being augmented by more revenues from other vendors. So we have more restaurants, we're having more retailers, we're having more of those revenue generators come in. So if we do have slides across the board, we still have all that new that's coming in, that's gonna help us at least stay at that same plateau. That's what happened in Arnold and 08, 9, and 10.
But I also think that we need to, and I know I've had conversations with you guys about annexation and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
We definitely need to be looking at that because we're gonna run out of commercial property pretty soon. And then we're gonna be kind of stuck on our sales tax.
Well, we're sales tax dependent. There's no doubt every community in the state of Missouri pretty much is. That's just the way that's the way the tax structure works for municipalities in Missouri. We're fortunate in the fact that we know, when we talked last week, Texas Roadhouse is coming in. They filled out their application and gave us an estimate on their gross revenue in their first year, and they're looking at $6.2 million. So we get 3% off of that. So there are some new players that are obviously going to be a boon. I mean, they think they're going to do 6.2. You could probably double that number with the number of people who already have a stake in Texas Roadhouse that is going to open in Festus and not someplace else.
And that's what I'm saying, Greg,
Yeah.
is it's like, I just think, over the years, I've always been pro-growth as far as City of Festus. And I've gotten hammered a few times about that, but I think it needs to be on the books all the time, a new project or a new piece of ground that's being annexed or something to look at the future of the growth. And I'm sure you guys all, look into that as well, but thankful, I think we should be very thankful that we have large companies like that, moving to our area, and because that will create more growth. And so,
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in my update to you guys, so that the consummation finally of the Texas Roadhouse deal, and then finally having it get to a point where we got an opening date. They've done all their paperwork as far as, building, permitting, business licenses. But the number of businesses that have now popped up on the radar that was the linchpin. It was the piece that it was the shoe everyone was waiting to drop. And I think the Goodwin development specifically, in this case, you're going to see a lot of activity out there in the next 18 months to 2 years. Yeah, people want to be around a high traffic center like Texas Roadhouse, and they turn people in and out of there every hour. So I do believe that the sales tax numbers that we've seen in the last 2 years are not going to continue. But at the same time, we have not spent in concert with those numbers. So there has been money going into the reserves every year during some seemed like bleak times. Are we ever going to get out of this? But to expect that there still will be, obviously it's going to cool, but I don't think it's going to go backwards. I still feel that where we are, the economic factors, the actions that the Federal Reserve is taking, obviously interest rates need to go up a little bit anyway. I mean, the banks are giving away money for free just about. Those things need to happen to cool things down, but I don't think we get to a point where we start going backwards. I think we'll still have a limited amount of growth in our economy, just our local economy, that will sustain us for the next year.
And Greg, my whole point is basically, you know, what Kevin was saying, I think that's a smart thing to do. I think, you know, we've talked about a lot of this stuff and maybe we ought to look at implementing it more than talking about it, because I think, you know, you're doing a couple things there. You're giving that employee potential to want to better himself or herself. And by the way, you know, you earn points by doing that. And that would, you know, I worked at Anheuser-Busch 100 years ago. And
They only made Budweiser at the time.
well, you know, they would give us a lot of beer. Yeah, but you know, they also would, you know, if we did certain things right, they would buy us a lobster dinner or do some nice things for us. And
We've done that, you know, the food trucks, pies.
Yeah.
We've added some just fun stuff.
Fun stuff,
Yeah.
perks. Doesn't cost the city, it doesn't cost the taxpayer a lot of money.
they like
And at the same time, I think you get a better employee because they're content. They think it's a cool place to work. They have a sense that the city leaders care about them and want to see them succeed, because we want them to go out and, you know, catch the bad guys that are trying to crash into our medical dispensaries and at the same time fill the potholes, and all points in between, you know.
every once in a while, I have an employee come up to me and they're not happy about this or that. And I really do have to look at them and say, I think you're nuts. Because you guys got some really good things going on here. You might like the newer people might not be making that big salary yet, but they got a lot of opportunity to make that salary. And yeah, I think they just need to stand
Right.
back and look how great they got it, really.
Right. Well, some positions too, you have to realize you don't want to price yourself out of a job.
Exactly.
You know, you have to remember who you serve and your educational levels and different things like that. But for example, I don't remember what it was when I left, but you got $10 a month. So that's $120 a year. So if you're here 1 year, you get a $120 longevity bonus. If you're here 10 years, you get $1,200. So these are real things to keep and build that longevity. Once again, I was always told, if you got a great idea, show us how you're going to pay for it. I didn't say that. I just say this is something to think about. And when you get up in the 20-year range, if we would have to consider these folks. But like I said, where I worked, they had a cap. You only could go, it only went so many years. But once again, the longevity was extremely high there. But once again, I mean, you get $120 this year. Next year, you get $240. I'm not going to do the math too many years or I'll get it all mixed up. But, you know, and this all could be in lieu of if it did get lean, that, you know, they always give it November. So it's right around the holidays. You know, things did get a little bit leaner. It's a way to increase some salaries to where maybe they were topped out. It has all kinds of options. And like I said, probably not a fair time to throw it in because it's going to cause a lot of conversation. But, you know, it is one way that you build longevity and you keep it. So, and that seems to be today. There's more opportunities without education out there now, and it seems like not a lot of people are taking them. And it kind of astonishes me. You know, years ago, jobs were kind of lean, and now you can get into something and they'll pretty well teach you. So it is one way to, like you say, where I work, take care of the old people, which in earlier years where I worked, it was pretty lean when they were building. And then once they got established, that's how they took care of the older folks. And then the younger guys, they had something to build to. So they had that to look forward to every year around the holidays, that little bit of extra money, or pay your taxes or whatever. But it is a way to give income without in being part of your salary. So I hope I said that properly, Stephanie.
Sounds good.
What if we did this? So we'll jump on the ARPA funding. What if the mayor gets back? We'll set a work session sometime in the next couple of months. Maybe discuss handbook and move forward for next year. That sounds agreeable.
Yeah.
I just had one thing to add to that option. Is that go out as a bonus,
Longevity. Yeah.
but is it taxed as a bonus? That's, I'm just, when it goes to the payroll.
We gross it up. So,
Because my thought would be offer, people like money and people like time off.
oh yeah,
So if you came at me as a younger person with kids and you said, hey, you can
I'd
have
rather have. the
$200, you can have a day off, I'll take the day off. Thank you.
But let's make some notes and we'll come back in circle.
that's a good idea. We could look at it as a,
Yeah, you can plug that in real easy.
whether it's cash or time.
I mean, we could probably look at it in the spring because I don't want to table this and just forget about
No,
it. I
no.
think we're on something. If we're working with the handbook, I think it's time to strike, but
Mhm.
I have a small bladder, so if we can go to ARPA funds. 'Cause if
Okay.
I step out, we got to stop, I think.
I'm
gonna hold that square.
If,
Go ahead, Mayor. Take a break.
no, I did not. No, I did not.
I try to slowly sip this or it's
Unless there's any questions specific to the capital outlay, which is covered kind of in the general overview sheet that Stephanie's provided. And obviously then there's the summary, the several sheets that are all part of your packet. What we would like to discuss are, there's actually items that are listed, and Brian was quick to notice all the wonderful color coding over the weekend. That's just, those are placeholders. So when you saw the color coding on the capital fund summary and also on the ARPA funding sheet, that's more for us to know. It wasn't anything where we were.
Yeah, it
just-
was mainly if I'm still waiting for a bid or, a final bid or quote or things like that.
So the two big questions now, if you look at the all fund capital asset summary, which is the first page, ARPA funding is listed there. You'll see also on the ARPA reimbursement tracking for 2022, engineering for the Kreitz Park restrooms, $40,000 listed twice. One, it's on the ARPA funding capital sheet. It's also listed on the ARPA reimbursement tracking. There are two projects we'd like for you to consider to cover with ARPA. One is the engineering for the restrooms. The problem we're having with the restrooms is since the closure of the lagoon and the forced sewer main that was installed, the smaller injection pumps or lift stations that we use for the bathrooms at Kreitz Park and the animal control facility sometimes have a hard time matching or surpassing the head pressure that's in that forced sewer main. And the pumps just can't handle it. So we need to have this re-engineered. We need to have, we thought at the time we would be able to just hook these on with a Y connector on the forced sewer main and everything would work in concert. But if you've got the big pumps down at the old lagoon site kicking on at about the same time the little pumps are at the bathrooms, you got a problem. And what it's caused is some problems with the restrooms. I'm sure you've noticed that we've had to have them closed on tournament weekends sometimes. Josh will have to scramble and bring in porta potties and things like that. So we think with a redesign where one of the initial thoughts is that the plumbing just runs back to the big wet well that'll be at the lagoon site, and it would just be able to be pumped there and then would be, of course, injected into the forced sewer main. But we wanted to accommodate this project and try to get these two. They've just been troublesome issues with that. And we thought the ARPA funding, since it's unrestricted, we'd be able to do that. The other one is a project we've been talking about for a long, long time. And I think we just ought to finally just do it, which is everybody goes to Kreitz Park to walk. Everybody goes out there to ride their bikes. Everybody goes out there to get in their cars, to drive around the circle. And all of those three activities at the same time, in the same place, in about a 12-foot wide path, just don't seem to work real well. So we've always talked about, I believe Mike was one of the first ones to bring this up, was to expand the width of the loop at the back of the park to accommodate pedestrians. Walkers only. This would be an inner loop that would allow walkers to be divided from the car traffic, the bicycle traffic that would still be on the loop as it exists today. rough estimate, and Josh, that's one of these numbers that are highlighted. Josh is working on getting us a better number, but roughly we're thinking $250,000 would more than cover that project. We would have a better number once we're just asking for a rough estimate from Jokers to come in. Not that they would do the work, but Grant's pretty good about coming out and giving us a good number to work off of. So those are two projects we're putting out there for you right away to consider moving out of the capital fund request sheet and moving it over to the ARPA fund sheet. The other one is, and there's a small amount in the budget for this, is to do an assessment on the barn at Kreitz Park. We're at a point now where we've really got a special treasure there that if we leave it go too much longer, we're going to lose it. We talked back in 2021 about spending about $12,000 to $15,000 and having an architect come in and just do a full needs assessment, determine what its needs are, what it would need electrically, what it would need to secure it from pigeons, what it would need to be ADA compliant, to give us a budget. And that would be, after that assessment, a number that I would like to recommend we plug into the ARPA funding. I think we have two public spaces that we've talked a lot about wanting to try to either open up or preserve. Open up meaning 406 West Main next to the library, preserve being the barn. Just roughly, I did some checking, and barns are very popular for receptions, specifically wedding venues. In Caledonia, they have a barn that is just a barn, nothing special about it, and it rents out for $1,000 a day. At Oak Valley, they've expanded their facility up there for receptions and weddings. They get $2,000 a day. In Bloomsdale, at Beachy Farms, which is a newer facility,
Just there for a wedding.
Right.
Amazing.
$4,500, and that's the base price. And they're booked 2 years. And then there's Wicked Pony Ranch in Ditmer, because that's easy to get to. $5,500.
My son getting married at the one off of 30 and Dublin
Okay,
out there. Also another barn.
another barn. So I think
Gorgeous.
we realize that we have some spaces here that the public would want to use, but which one is more attractive? Which one is more appealing? And which one actually stands a chance of generating some revenue at the same time? Now, we could renovate 12,500 square feet on Main Street here and have some meeting space and things like that. And that would be all well and good. And maybe that's something we do. But the one that has the one is at a higher risk right now of us losing it because of just the age of the building. But two has the potential to really become something special. If something that we can't talk about right now, but did talk about in closed session here a week or two ago, comes to fruition, that we're able to really have a space there that has room for the public, has all the look and charm of what you want, and would be right in this price range of some of these locations. I really think that being able to move on the barn project with these ARPA funds that are available to us is a home run. I've been kicking around. We've been kicking it around for, 3 years now. Probably we were talking about this back in 18 or 19, and we just hate to see that asset go away. It sits empty right now.
On the barn, would it be looking to redesign it to be more appealing to make it more of a country look, not just slap up something, but to make it something really stand out that somebody's really going to market to really want to come there.
Yeah, to not just be able to open it up. One, it's not AD compliant right now, so we need to do that. Two, it needs restroom facilities. It probably need a small kitchen facility. Right now, the bottom of it is dry and being used for storage by the Parks Department. So the basement of it, which has only about a 5-foot ceiling, maybe isn't practical to use because it was an area that was used for cattle. They ran the cows in and out of the basement of the bottom of the barn. but the area around it, being able to improve access, and parking and all the
Well,
things that you
The
need.
reason I say that was because those other places you talked about are fixed up to really be special. And then you're gonna get a venue of someone wedding reception. You make it look like something that someone really gonna enjoy to come there and decked out where they can, that's where you're gonna make it. If we just slap it and say, here, this, you can get married in a barn. Well, if you deck that barn out.
Yeah. Well, preservation should be our first one because I've been in it some years ago and I would hate to go in it these days. So we may not have anything left. So we're gonna have to at least do something to save the place. And it's a historic place in this community. So, but it needs some work pretty quick.
So if everyone's agreeable, as part of the ARPA discussion to move things along, what we would like to do is leave the 40,000 for the park restroom, kind of us getting that engineered and fixed. On the ARPA side, we'd like to move the $250,000. Once we get the updated number from Joe Christ, it would change to that, the estimate, move that to for the park trail to ARPA funding. We'll go ahead and leave the architectural assessment for the barn in the current capital outlay, which we have already got programmed, but would like, if everyone's agreeable, for us to say that once we have that report to come back to you guys, and I don't want to use the word earmark, but we'll say that we've at least tentatively given a bit of a nod to pursuing preservation of the barn with what would probably be the balance of the ARPA funds, which we do need to have committed by 25 and spent by 26 anyway. So
I think it's a great idea. It's something that historic Festus is going to be historic if we don't save things, and for it to have a revenue stream and for it to be have utility. I don't know how you could miss out on it.
Sam and I and I think Larry, at the time we went through the barn, me and Sam had never been in the barn. Heard they used to have barn dances in there. So we took a tour through all of that, and we found, like, at the time, we thought, this is a great place to have something like that. We talked about that then. That's been a few years ago. And but we need to make a move on it. We're going to preserve it. But it would be a valuable place for us. You could really make a showcase, like Bobby said there. You could really do some good with it.
Get some numbers, see what's gonna cost us.
well, the architectural assessment would be first, or I have a civil engineer come in and take a look and give us an idea of what immediate needs are and what it needs to really then start to move past that. The other part of that I'll say is that something I just forgot.
Age money. Mike's great.
Sorry, I appreciate the help, but Mike's great there. Okay. But it is something that is truly iconic. It shows up. Anybody takes a picture of Festus out of Kreitz Park, they take a picture of the barn. So I think we recognize the asset that it is to have some extra funds available. And there's the possibility, there's been some grant opportunities. We're not quite ready for that. Matt found was it Land Water Conservation Fund or?
It was Missouri Tourism.
Missouri Tourism.
Tourism has ARPA funds. Shane, Missouri got a good portion of ARPA funds too. So it's a grant spawn from that we are eligible for if we had a project.
So in order for us to have a project, we need to have some architectural engineering work done. And then we have something, as they like to say, shovel ready, that we would be able to put in front of Missouri Tourism or any of these other DNR. I mentioned LWCF. So we'd have something we could put in front of them that would then make it eligible possibly for some 50-50 funding, something along that lines.
But we would be renting it out and using it to bring in revenue. Right?
Absolutely.
Well, why wouldn't we just look at it as a business and do it? I mean, figure out, I like your idea. And I mean, it'll fund itself and it'll,
Over time,
it would-
absolutely. Over time, it would certainly be able to, unlike some of the other, I think, projects we've taken on where we thought we could pay ourselves back. Here, you actually have the potential for a pretty decent revenue stream. and a revenue stream that'll be guaranteed. All of these places I mentioned, and those are just 4 that are within a rock's throw of here, are booked, unless you're getting married on a Tuesday. They're booked years in advance. Years in advance,
So,
as you probably well know.
yes, very much so. Well, luckily it's not it's my son, not my daughter, but, so 2 questions. One is, if that ties up the rest of the ARPA funds, then I would really like to see Festus have an accessible playground. From what I understand, Kate's playground was turned away several years ago, and we all see how that is, but it's surprising to me that we don't have anything at Kreitz Park or anywhere else that is handicap accessible. So to me, that's a very big shortfall in our community. My other question is, the airport funds that are there, is that only for acquiring pieces of property? Or is that something that can be tapped for other things, such as the barn or a playground or something along those lines? What is its purpose? Because that's way before my time.
And some can speak to that. I think it has always been approached as something that would go towards hard, tangible, like real estate.
Or any enhancement of the city that would be a good thing for the city. Usually hard assets, but it something that would serve the citizens well, as we are using the money to serve them well, I guess, for a better explanation. You know, we just didn't want it, every project that came up, we were a little short to get into it. So, you know, I think we passed an ordinance, but I couldn't tell you what it was, but that was the intent. You know, to use our money well and for the betterment of our citizens, and any opportunity to buy property, certainly that would enhance it, would go along that, or something that we think that we're lacking, that we can make a big difference, I think would be in the spirit of what we tried to do back in those days. So my memory ain't what it used to be either, but that was the intent of it.
So my thought there would be, the barn would be potentially, I think, more of a trouble spot, because if we're looking at actually bringing in revenue from that, then I'm not sure that really fits kind of that goal. But if a playground or something else along those lines that is open to any citizen of Festus, and I'm sure there's some sort of grant opportunity out there somewhere for something like that. But I just think, given the ratings that our school has for dealing with special education is massive. And you have people that come to Festus just because of our elementary education. So to offer something that fits a wide group of people in this area, I think we're kind of missing the target on that.
What if I throw this at you? I think you're onto something. What if we allocate the funds for the barn, get the barn done, take a look at it with the market study, then talk about airport funds? What if we treat them as 2 separate projects?
No, I think it is 2 separate projects, and I'm fine with that. But my only thought was, like Kevin was saying, that those funds from the airport were to be for something for the greater good. But the greater good is, the playground is not going to necessarily draw revenue, whereas the barn potentially does. Right, exactly. No, I don't disagree. I just wouldn't want anybody to say, well, why did you use those airport funds for something that you were going to make money off of? When we can say, well, no, we use the airport funds to enrichment for. That way people aren't saying, well, you're using that money that was not for that to stuff your own pockets, instead of it was just a philanthropic.
Stacy, I think I think a lot of times the way we've looked at the airport money is we've used it to make the city money or to save the city money. So, I mean, I know we looked at it at one time. We bought police cars, but we bought a fire truck with it, and we used that to replenish our money, and we're going to buy that house with the interest we've made on the airport. So, I mean, oh yeah, that's right. Where am I anyhow? But
Priority.
that's all right. That's all right. I didn't know you had the capability to do
I just learned
that. Sorry. I'm gonna roll.
I think you've given us some good direction here this evening. If everyone is comfortable with, as I mentioned, the sewer project out there at the park, to get that lined out, and to cover the cost of finally that walking loop trail. We'll move that into ARPA. We'll get the architectural assessment, which is in capital. And then we can make a call if we decide that we want to use ARPA funds. To be honest with you, I think based on the barn and its condition and the things that'll need to be done to really make it, I think what we're all envisioning, which is a premier location, $700,000 ain't gonna touch it. So, I mean, it'll be a nice start. But it's based on the age of the barn, which is over 100 years now, or close to 100 if it's not right at it.
It's gonna have to be sprinkled, there's gonna have to be a parking lot.
It may not
Yeah.
be savable. That's what we gotta look at.
We should have an open house.
I think it's.
Structurally, I think it's
fine.
On the
okay.
plus side, though, if you're doing one of those barns, right, it's exposed beams, it's a lot of wood.
Mhm.
You're not talking a lot of drywall and other, it's exposed everything.
Right.
So, and there's plenty I'll bring back some pictures from the.
Please do, please do. Outside of that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if there's any other questions, happy to answer them. I again tip my cap to the excellent work done by our excellent finance director, Stephanie Cunningham, all of our department heads. Everybody came ready. We sat down, we walked through it, and we got things done. So I appreciate all the work that they do. It makes hopefully your job a lot easier of deciding and assessing what the needs of the community are. Because at the end of the day, I know we all got our hearts in the same place, which is to take care of the residents of Festus. And I think this budget does that.
Any other questions?
On-
Hey,
On the park, on the practice park out here on the awning, $25,000.
That's on the capital. Yeah, that's on the 3-year plan. Stand by. You pull up. What page are you on there? Right. So we're doing a setback. The idea is that the obviously the front of the stage is unshaded, but also the sides and the back as well. So as a staging area behind it for artists, on the sides for loading in and loading equipment in and out. Yes, and then they eventually extend a cover over the dance floor, if you want to call it that. So he wanted to start planning for us to do these improvements to the park stage. So it wouldn't be something we would do this year, but once we build up enough funds, departments have been real good about this over the years, where we've set money aside. Police does it every year for 911 upgrades because we know every 5 years we're going to do them. So the 25 grand there is the start of a setback for us to be able to expand. I think the covered area around the stage makes loading in and out a lot better, makes it better for the artists when they're there. Something you'll appreciate, sir. And then all at the same time, a place for people to dance out front.
Yes, on the phone, there is. Their stage elevator was broken, we had to carry everything up all the house.
any other questions? Hey, we got a closed session, correct?
Correct.
So I'll need a motion to go in closed session. For the notice hereby given at the City Council of Festus will go into closed session pursuant to Missouri law for the purposes of dealing with matters related to RSMO 610.021. Number 1, legal matters. Number 3, personnel, and 13, personnel. Okay, I was just making sure I was reading that right, guys. I need a motion, please.
So move.
Need a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Weiner,
Yes.
Councilman Boyer,
Yes.
Councilman Dennis,
Yes.
Councilman Tenon,
Yes.
Councilman Benz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Templeton,
Yes.
Councilman Collier.
Yes. Okay,